Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is daf Membet 42 in Masechet Avodah Zarah. Let me share my screen and we'll get started. Here we go. So yesterday we introduced a disagreement regarding Avodah Zarah that breaks on its own. Now, before that, we had noted that if an idolater breaks his own Avodah Zarah, well, then that item is no longer subject to the prohibitions of being an idol because if he broke it, so it means that he was nullifying its status. But what if it breaks on its own? And so there we had a debate between Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan said it's prohibited to benefit from it because the idolater did not nullify it, meaning we don't have any evidence that the idolater nullified it. And so we have to effectively presume that it's still a valid idol in his mind, and therefore it's subject to all the prohibitions that are associated with it being an idol. Namely, we're not allowed to benefit from it. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish disagrees. He's like, no, he has the great language. It's permitted to benefit from it because the idolater presumably did nullify it. Right. Because he would say, if the idol can't save itself, could it possibly save me? I love that language. I mean, first of all, it highlights the humor. I mean, the rabbis themselves had to recognize the humor in that. But it's also, the irony associated with idolatry. So in any event, so that's Reish Lakish's position. And then we brought three proofs yesterday, two in support of Rabbi Yochanan, one in support of Reish Lakish. And so today we're going to bring up, as we pick up on the 12th line of Membet Amud Aleph, we're going to pick up with a fourth effort. And we're going to end up with 11 different efforts. In the end, there's going to be 9 efforts to support Rabbi Yochanan and 2 efforts to support Reish Lakish. But now we're again back to the supporting of trying to question Reish Lakish, and it's Rabbi Yochanan effectively speaking, and it says, Ezvei, he's asking a question, Matzah tavnis yad tavnis regel. I'm sorry, Matzah tavnis yad tavnis regel. If you found, right, this is the language that we saw in our Mishnah, I believe, yesterday, that if you found the figure of a hand or the figure of a foot, Hare elu is asurin, these are prohibited, meaning, at least at the moment, that they, even though they're broken off of another idol, they are still prohibited. Because those kinds of things are worshipped. So, but amai hashvarim ninhu, aren't they broken? And doesn't this show that Reish Lakish is incorrect? That a broken idol remains valid and is worshipped and therefore prohibited. So no, Ha Tergama Shmuel. Nah, Shmuel explained that already. He said, Ba'omdim al basisan. We're dealing with a hand or a foot that is on its base, and so as a result, it is viewed as whole. It is a complete item. It is not in fact broken, and that's why we're going to say that that's enough if it's whole to be considered that maybe they worshipped it. So that was effort number 4. Effort number 5. Ezve, again, Rabbi Yochanan asks on Reish Lakish. We have a Mishnah. This is a Mishnah down on Daf Nun Bet Amud Bet. So we'll see in about a week and a half that if there's an idol worshiper has the ability to nullify his own idol, Vishel Chavero, and he can also nullify his friend's idol, meaning if he breaks it, that's sufficient. For Yisrael, but a Jew, but a Jew doesn't have the ability to nullify any idol of any idol worshiper. So, but amai to heavy kavodas kochav shenishbara me'ala. It shouldn't be any worse than if the idol itself broke on its own, And because after all, shouldn't the person still say, according to Reish Lakish, if it can't save itself, could it possibly save me? The same reasoning applies. So Amar Abaye Shipichasa. No, we're not talking about where the Jew broke the item, but rather he just dented the item. As Rashi says, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 lines down in the narrow lines of Membed Amud Aleph, Shibchasa, Hika Aleha Yisrael, Bipatish, that he hit the idol with a hammer, Ad Nisma'aka, until it bruised, Tsursa, until its image bruised. Aval lo chisra klum, but nothing's missing from it, so it didn't actually break. So hilkach lo bato, and so as a result, we're not going to treat that as being something that is be considered nullified. But one second, who cares if he only dented it? That should still be sufficient to constitute nullification. How do I know that it's sufficient to constitute nullification? Because v'hatnan, we learned pichasa, if you just dented it, Afal P, this is referring to an idolater denting his own idolatry. Afal P shelo chisra, even though nothing's missing, bitla, he's nullified it. So how could you say that chasa is what we're talking about and that the Jew has just dented it and that's not considered nullification? When a non-Jew dents it, it's considered nullification. Well, hani mili de b'chasa ovid kochav. No, you're right. When a non-Jew, when an idolater dents his own idol, well, then that's going to be considered nullification. But aval pchasa Yisrael lo bitla. But when a Jew dents it, it's not considered nullification. So Rava Amar, Rava offers a different answer. So again, answer number one as to how come if a Jew nullifies an idol of an idolater, it's not considered nullified. So answer number one is it would be considered nullified. If you actually broke it, it would be considered nullified. But but we're dealing with a situation of denting, and denting does not nullify it. The Rava says, La'olam ki pichasa Yisrael nami bitla. Really, even denting would ordinarily create nullification, meaning that there is no special rule for Jews versus non-Jews when it comes to breakage or denting of Zarah, but there is, however, a decree that the rabbis made. Dilma magbala v'hadar mevatala. Maybe the Jew will lift up the idol before he nullifies it, before he breaks it. And what happens once he lifts it? Well, once he lifts it, Vahavi avodos kochavim b'yad Yisrael. Suddenly, it becomes an idol in the possession of a Jew. V'chol avodos kochavim b'yad Yisrael einu bitla l'olam. And we have a principle that once a Jew takes ownership of an idol, he has no ability to nullify it. It's nothing. There's nothing he could do. Essentially, it's almost like chametz she'avar alav Pesach, chametz on Pesach, where we say that if you have chametz on Pesach, you have to burn it in order to get rid of it. It's not you. It's essentially like it's there's nothing you can do to nullify it any longer. You can't just say it's not yours. So the point is that so that's the bottom line. So according to Rava, it's not about the way you damaged it, but it's a rabbinic decree. So really, biblically, it is nullified. But rabbinically, we're concerned that maybe you'll lift it beforehand, and therefore we're going to say that it's going to that we won't let you simply break it. We won't let a Jew simply break it. So Eisvei, now we're going to ask a bunch of questions, and in the next 3 or 4 questions, we're going to answer each time the fact that it is all answered by Rava's answer, that the same principle applies. That bottom line is we're worried the Jew's going to lift it up before he breaks it, and thereby he would take ownership, and therefore his nullification would not be valid. And because we're worried about that, even if he doesn't pick it up, we're going to say that it's going to be problematic. So Eisvei, next question that Rabbi Yochanan asks, Ovid kocha akum. So it's referring to Oven Kochavim Muzalos. Akum shehevi avanim min markulis, that if an idol worshiper takes the stones out of a markulis. Now, what is a markulis? So thankfully, Rashi tells us. Rashi, it's basically middle of the narrow lines in Rashi. The end of the line has the word akum at it. So it's the only place on the entire page where akum is the last word of the line in Rashi. So Marcos, yesh akum she'ovadim legal. There are these idol worshippers that they worship legal shalavanim. They worship a pile of stones. The Korin lo la Markulis, and the pile of stones itself is called a Markulis. The Kol Haba, and anybody who comes to worship the idol, Zorek la Even, Vihi Avodah, they'll throw a stone on the pile, and that pile, as it grows, becomes the expanding idol. So the point is that if in fact a idol worshiper were to take a stone from the markless and thereby be breaking down the markless, the chipa behen durachim utratayos, and he then uses it as paving stones for roads or highways. So mutaros, well, then everything is permitted, because what did he do? He broke the idol, and therefore it's considered he broke the idol, and therefore it's considered nullified, and therefore we're allowed to walk on those streets. But v'Yisrael shehevi avanim min markulis. But if a Jew takes the stones out of a markulis pile, the chipa behen drachim utrachios, and he uses it to pave roads or highways. Asuros, you're not allowed to walk on those roads, because but 1 second, why should it be a problem? After all, isn't he breaking down that pile and so thereby nullifying it? Because everybody agrees that a Jew that breaks down the idol is nullifying it. And that's why we can't answer Rava's answer. Remember, Rava said, well, we're dealing with denting. You can't say denting here because the pile is being demolished in order to get the bricks for the road. So to have a avodas kochavim shenish, why not say that this is just like an idol that broke on its own when the Jew takes away the stones, and therefore it's no longer a valid idol? So hakinami kid the Rava. No, again, Rava's concern exists. We're worried that you're going to lift up the entire pile of stones as a first step, and then you'll take apart the stones. And so as a result, that would be problematic.
Why is that?
What?
Why?
Because the point, so the point that we said, Rava's point, is that if a Jew is in possession of an idol, he has no longer any ability to nullify it. And so by lifting it up, it becomes in his possession, and therefore, as we said, that when you have a idol that's in the possession of a Jew, it can never be nullified. And so as a result, that's why, because of our concern that maybe the Jew will lift it up, we're going to say that a rabbinic concern, a rabbinic gezerah, that we're not going to let them use the stones. If a Jew takes the stones away from the pile, we're not going to let them use those stones. We're going to say that those stones remain prohibited with hana. You're not allowed to benefit from those stones.
But he's destroying the idol. He's taking it apart.
Yes, exactly. But even if you destroy the idol, if the rabbis are worried that you might take possession of the idol before you destroy it. And if you were to take possession of the idol before you destroyed it, you would no longer be able to destroy it. And therefore, rabbinically, they're saying that also you can't benefit from an idol that a Jew destroyed if there's a concern of them picking it up.
So I wonder if one can extend this one. I'm thinking there is a question about a Jewish community taking over a church, converting that into a synagogue. It's an extension, because that was a standing question whether it's idol worship or not, but I'll leave that aside. But if you think maybe that then there are some people that are opposed to that because maybe, like you're saying, they're taking the whole item that might be
Mm-hmm.
maybe idol worship. That's I'm then just I mean
Yeah, so
that's
the question is sort of what, is there a deconsecration process that happens before the sale? If the idol worshipers deconsecrate the location before they engage in the sale to the Jew, well, then it's no longer going to be considered a makom of idol worship, and so as a result, it potentially would be permitted. I don't know for sure that the rules that we're dealing with directly apply, but that you're absolutely right that that would be that to the extent that these rules do apply, we could say that essentially this is that what the question is: do the idol worshippers do the deconsecration, or is it only the Jews who do it when they purchase it? Purchase it. If it's only the Jews that do it when they purchase it, then exactly this issue, Rava's concern, should also apply. The Jews shouldn't be able to deconsecrate it any longer because it's in their possession. So that you raise an excellent point, an excellent question that needs to be addressed in those circumstances. I know for a fact that obviously there have been synagogues that have taken over churches. Yeah, sure. And in New Rochelle, until they built their building, they were in a church for many years. I'm sure. So in any event, the bottom line is that it's possible. You just have to be very careful. Okay, so Ezve, another challenge, number 7 in our list of overall challenges, our 6th challenge by Rabbi Yochanan to Reish Lakish. Ovid kochavim shishipa ovodas kochavim litzarko. If you have a wooden idol. Now we're going to see that in the end, it's going to be an Asherah tree. It's going to be a tree that is being worshipped. But at the moment, let's just deal with it as a wooden idol. That if the idolater cuts off pieces of the idol for his own needs, meaning that he needs it in order to burn wood, he vishipuyeha mutarin. Both the idol and the chips of wood are no longer are permitted because the pieces of wood were cut for the person's own needs, so they were never thought of as an idol, and the idol's now been broken, so as a result, it's not really an idol either. So litzarka, but litzarka, if in fact it's for its own needs, and Rashi explains litzarka means liafota, in order for its own beauty. So then, so you trim the tree to make it look nice. He asura ushvishipua yeah mutarin. Well, then when the non-Jew does it, the tree itself remains, the idol itself remains prohibited, but the chips themselves are permitted because the chips are not part of were part of the idol, but they're not part of the idol any longer, and so that's going to be okay. However, if a Jew does it, well, Bain Litzarko, it doesn't make a difference whether he wants the wood or he wants or he wants to make the idol more beautiful. He vishipuya asurin. Everything is prohibited. But why should it be prohibited according to Reish Lakish? To heavy avodas kochavim shenishtu. It should at least be like, it should be no worse than an idol that breaks on its own. And again, Reish Lakish says that an idol that breaks on its own is considered no longer an idol. So why is it a problem? So hachinami kidarava. Here too, the point is that we're concerned for Rava's concern, which is that somebody will pick up this idol / tree. Presumably the tree is not actually in the ground, but and as a result, the Jew will take ownership of it before he destroys it, and as a result, there won't be any destruction. So as a result, the Rava says that the rabbis made a gzeira that we're not going to allow that to happen. So that was challenge number 7. Challenge number
but don't
8.
we have in either next week's Bat Hanan or Ekev, I'm not sure the Torah. Call Asherah lo. Torah was that where it tells us that we can't allow an Asherah, and they're going and they're allowed to destroy it and to use it, or can they use it? I mean,
No, you can't use it. You have to destroy it, and the bottom line is that you have to destroy it. Now, biblically, the destruction of it should allow its pieces to be used,
Use,
but
correct.
according to the rabbis, according to Rava, they would not be allowed to be used because if the Jew is doing the destruction, because we're worried that the Jew might lift the idol before he does the destruction and therefore have it in his possession. Now, maybe you could even argue that it doesn't make a difference whether he lifts it because of all of Israel is in the Jew's possession. So depending on the specific situation, you need to look at the specific case. But the bottom line is that the concern is that the destruction itself won't undermine and won't be nullify the status of the Asherah tree. So Esvei, challenge number 8, challenge number 7 to Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Rabbi Yossi says, Shochek v'zora laruach. What if you have this is this Mishnah? This is a Mishnah that we'll see, God willing, tomorrow. That says when dealing with a metal idol, Rabbi Yossi says that you can grind it up and throw it out into the air, ometil layam, or push it into the sea. And Amrulo, the rabbi, said to him, "1 second, avhinasa lezevel." But when you do that, it becomes some sort of fertilizer for the ground. It becomes nourishing for the ground, and that will benefit you. Uksiv lo yidbak biyadcha meuma min acherim. Your nothing of the banned property should be in your hand, meaning that you can't have any benefit. But now using this, the Rabbi Yochanan asks to Reish Lakish, Amai, why should the rabbis prohibit the powder from the pulverized idol? Tehevika avodas kochavim shenishbara me'aleh. It's just like it broke on its own, and again, according to Reish Lakish, that should be enough to nullify the idol, because the idolater will say that, listen, the idol can't protect itself. How is it going to protect me? So again, Hachinami Kidarava, we're again concerned of Rava, that before the destruction and the crushing of this idol, the Jew will pick it up and take possession of it. And so as a result, that's not it's only prohibited rabbinically, and that's what we're talking about. And it's a rabbinic decree that we're worried that you're going to pick up the idol and then it won't be nullified. So Esvei, so in second, Rabbi Yochanan again asks Reish Lakish, Rabbi Yossi ben Yasayan, ben Yasyan, excuse me, Omer, Matzah Tzuras Drakon. If you find the figure of a drakon, and we're going to see, it's sort of like the definition here in Jastrow is dragon, although actually Jastrow offers another definition of a boa constrictor. But it's some kind of reptile, snake, serpent, etc., that was worshipped. The rosho chasuch, and its head was cut off. Suffolk Oved Kochavim Chatacho, Suffolk Yisrael Chatacho. And we're not sure whether a Jew cut it off or a non-Jew cut it off. Mutter. In that case, it is permitted to benefit. Vada Yisrael Chatacho, but if we know that a Jew cut it off, Asur, then it's prohibited. But again, Amai Tehevi Kavodas Kochavim Shenishbara Meila. It should be like an idol that broke on its own. And not surprisingly, once again, we answer Hachanami Kidarava. It's like Rava, meaning that we're worried that the Jew picked it up before he cut off its head, and therefore took ownership of it, and therefore he would not be able to nullify it. Okay. One more challenge, this to Reish Lakish, and then we'll get a challenge from Reish Lakish to Rabbi Yochanan. Again, all of these challenges are defended, but Esvei, one more challenge, and this time we're not going to be able to answer about Rava, as we will see in a moment. Rabbi Esvei, Rabbi Yochanan asks Rabbi Reish Lakish, Rabbi Yossi Omer, we have the following Mishnah. The Mishnah is on Daf Mem Chet Amud Bet. So Rabbi Yossi says, Af lo yirakos b'imos hagashamim. And that Mishnah is dealing with planting underneath an Asherah tree. And we say that you can't even plant under an Asherah tree in winter. Why? Mipnei shahanivaya no sheres aleihen. Because the falling leaves of the Asherah tree are going to fall on the plantings and serve as fertilizer. But am I to heavy kavodas kochavim shenishbara melah? Why not treat it like an idol that broke on its own? And here, there is no Jew that's involved. And so as a result, you can't say that we're worried about the Jew picking up the Asherah tree. Yes, we might have that concern if a Jew's involved, but here there's no Jew involved, so there's no worry about it. And yet we say, meaning even if we know that no Jew was involved, we say that it's going to be problematic. So shiny Hassam, therefore, we have to answer it slightly differently, that this is different, the Ikar Avodos Kochavim Kayemis, because the tree is still standing, meaning when when the leaves fall down, it's not really undermining the nature of the tree. As Rashi tells us, last Rashi on Membet Amud Aleph, De'ikar avodos kochavim kayemes ha'ilan lo bitel. The tree itself was not nullified. Hilkach nevia hanosheres mimena asura. So as a result, the leaves that fall off from it are going to be prohibited. Okay, so there we go. So in second, though, Hashipuyan. What about, we saw way back a few questions ago, the case of the chips of the Asherah. The Ikar Avodos Kochavim Kayemis. Why not say in the chips case that where we said that if the non-Jew cuts off chips for himself, it's going to all be permitted, and if he does it for the idol, the chips are permitted and the idol is prohibited. V'katani lutzarka hi asura v'shipuyeha mutarin. There, the chips are permitted. So why should the chips be permitted when the leaves are not permitted? Right? So Rav Huna, Braid Rav Yoshua Amar. So Rav Yehuna answers, Lefisha ein avodas kochavim betela derek delasa, because an idol does not become nullified based on its normal growth. Meaning the tree has when you cut even just a little bit off of it and you shave it, so then what you shaved off is no longer part of the idol. But what goes through as the tree grows in its natural state, that doesn't undermine the nature of the underlying item, and as a result, even the things that were to fall off of it naturally might be considered or would be considered prohibited, because there isn't the same kind of concept of having taken something off of the idol in order to separate it. And so as a result, effectively, on some level, what we're saying is that the produce in and of itself, because that's a natural part of the process, would be prohibited as well. So again, so far we have asked 9 questions to Reish Lakish, answered all of them. We asked yesterday 1 question from Reish Lakish to Rabbi Yochanan, and now we ask our second question from Reish Lakish to Rabbi Yochanan.
So we're saying that the fruits underneath the tree, fruits or vegetables, they are not permitted. But also there's something that falls off the tree. We say that's permitted or not?
No, if it falls off the tree in the natural growth, that's prohibited. And because that's prohibited, you're not allowed to plant underneath the Asherah, because we're worried that falling off growth is going to serve as fertilizer for what you plant underneath it. Okay, so we've asked again 9 questions to Reish Lakish, but now we ask our second question to Rabbi Yochanan with our 11th effort to try and prove somebody is right. We're going to not be successful in this effort. Again, I don't think this is one of the exceptions to the fact that the halacha is generally like Rabbi Yochanan. So as a result, presumably we hold like Rabbi Yochanan. Let me just go back and just double check that that's where the marking for the halacha is, and then we'll get going. Yeah, it seems like we paskin like Rabbi Yochanan that it's prohibited, even if it breaks on its own. Okay, so Eisvei, Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish lo Rabbi Yochanan. So now it's Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish's turn to ask a question to Rabbi Yochanan. Kain shebirosha ilan shel hektish. we have a Mishnah. This is a Mishnah in Maseches Me'ilah, Daf Yud Gimel Amud Bet, that if a nest is at the top of a tree that has been donated to Hektish, meaning that the temple treasury owns it and can use the profits from the tree in order to support the operations of the Beit HaMikdash. Lo nanin, you're not allowed to benefit from that nest. The lo moelin. And at the same time, if you do benefit from it, it's not considered me'ilah. So Rashi helps us understand what's going on. Lo nanin, Da'asr midirabanan. It's rabbinically prohibited, meaning this is not a biblical prohibition, but rather a rabbinic prohibition. And lo moelin, next Rashi, third line of the top, from the top of Membet Amabet, and that's where we are right now. We're on the top of Membet Amabet. Im nana, if you did benefit, lo mal midoraisa, there is not me'ilah, biblical me'ilah. Sheyitzchayev korban, that you korban me'ilah, that would make you liable for a korban that one owes if one engages in me'ilah. L'kama mefarish taima, and we all will soon see the reason that it's not going to be a problem. But basically, I'll give you that. I'll forecast that. The bottom line is that if in fact the nest is what's needed from the nest is not dependent on the tree itself, well, then the tree itself is then it's not going to be considered like the tree, and so as a result, you'll be able to benefit. Birosha shel Asherah. On the other hand, if instead of a tree of Hektish that was donated to the Beis HaMikdash, it's a tree of Asherah, Yatiz Bakana, you're allowed to knock down that nest with a stick, so as a result, and then you're allowed to benefit from it. As Rashi says, Yatiz Bakana, last line of the wide lines at the top of Rashi, Yashlik Eitzi Hakana, send out the wood of a stick, b'makel min ha'ilan, and then you hit it with hit the tree, and you get the nest, v'yisrafena, and now you can use the nest as firewood, v'yanemehem, and benefit from the nest, v'lo ya'aleh al asherah, but you can't climb up the tree, v'yitlem, to take it, de'im came, because if you were to climb up the tree, nimsa mishtamish b'asherah, you'd be using the Asherah tree, you'd be benefiting from it. B'makom sulam, using it instead of a ladder. V'zu hi hana, and that's some kind of benefit. Mimenu, min ha'asherah, and that would be some kind of benefit from the Asherah, and therefore it would be problematic. So kasalka daita kagon shishabru mimena eitzim. Now, this is, what's the situation? Where did the nest come from? And so the Gemara now assumes that the nest in this Mishnah came from the tree itself, namely the bird broke off the twigs of either the Asherah or the Hektish tree and then used it to make a nest. V'kinsa bahen, and he made a nest with it. V'katani yatas b'kana, and yet we see that the person's able to knock down the nest and benefit from the nest. So what do we see? That if a bird breaks an Asherah tree, that's considered as if it's no longer an Asherah, and you're allowed to benefit from the nest. The only issue with getting the nest, because you can't climb the Asherah tree. So doesn't that show, Rabbi Yochanan, that you're wrong? That in fact, if something breaks on its own, it's no longer considered an idol? So not necessarily. Nah, we could say that we're talking about a case where the birds got the twigs to make their nest from another tree, and it wasn't from this Asherah tree, and therefore it's not a problem for them to benefit from the nest. And Daikanami, in fact, you could maybe even say that a close reading of that Mishnah makes clear that that's the case. Dekatani gabi hektish, because when it came to hektish, we said lo nen and velo maolin, that you cannot benefit, but you also aren't doing mila. Well, amrat Bishlama da'aiti eitzim ma'alma, if in fact the bird brought the twigs from elsewhere, hainu dekatani gabi hektish, that's why it says with respect to hektish, lo nen and below moalin, that you can't benefit, and it's also not me'ila. Lo nen and midirabanan, we prohibit benefit because it's rabbinically problematic. Below moalin midoraisa, but it's not me'ila because according to biblical law, it's not mila. Dahal lo kadishe, because these twigs came from another tree and therefore were never hektish. But Ella amrat shishavra behen. But if you say that these twigs broke off from the tree that was donated to Hektish, and the birds built a nest with them, amai lo molin. Why isn't it actually biblical me'ila? Ha-kadishe. These twigs were consecrated from the Beis HaMikdash, and so as a result, they still belong to the Beis HaMikdash. So doesn't that show that my interpretation, Rabbi Yochanan's interpretation, that we must be talking about a nest made from twigs of a different tree, doesn't it show that that must be the accurate read of this Mishnah? No, not necessarily. Midiirya, you're going to tell me that that's your proof? That's not a proof. No, these twigs grew after the person made the tree hektish. And the kasabar, and according to the Tana of this Mishnah, ein me'ilin begedulin. When you make a tree hektish, and now it has some further growth, that additional growth is not in and of itself necessarily hektish. And so as a result, that is not going to be subject to me'ila. So Rabbi Abau Amar Rabbi Yochanan. So that again, answer number one is a fine answer, but there's no definitive proof that answer is correct. So now Rabbi Abau, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, offers a second possible answer. My yatis, what does it mean that he knocks it down and he can benefit from it? Yatis be'efrochen. No, what he gets the benefit from is the chicks, not that are in the nest, not the nest itself. You're right. The nest itself remains prohibited because when something breaks off on its own from an idol, it is not considered nullified. And so therefore, when the birds break off the twigs remain prohibited as idols. But what can you benefit from? You can benefit from the chicks that are inside the nest. So Amar Lei Rabbi Yaakov, Rabbi Yirmiyah Bar Tachlifa, so Rabbi Yaakov said, Asperalach, I'm going to tell you, when is it that you can benefit from these chicks? Be'efrochen, only when they're chicks. Kan v'kan mutarin. Well, then it doesn't make a difference whether it's a hektish tree or an asherah tree. When you get them out of it, they are going to be permitted. And Rashi explains, because mutarin de ein srichen le'ilan, second to last Rashi before the Mishnah, that it's mutar because they no longer need the tree. But babeitzim, when it comes to eggs, kan v'kan asurin, they're going to be prohibited. Meaning, even if you were to knock down the nest and now you find in the nest eggs, those eggs are still prohibited because they depend on the tree. The tree is essentially supporting them. And so therefore, whether it's a hektish tree or an asherah tree, those eggs are still going to be prohibited. And Amar Rav Ashi, the efrochen shetzrichen le'iman, keveitzim damu. And you know what? A really baby chick that still needs its mom, that's considered like an egg as well, and also would be prohibited. And so as a result, when we say that we're talking about is knocking down and getting the chicks, we're talking about knocking down and getting the chicks that are a little bit older that don't still need their mom. Okay, so now we get...
You're talking about two different types of trees, though. One's an asherah and one's a hektish tree.
Correct. And in both cases, if the item, according to what the Rabbi Abau in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, if the item is still dependent on the tree, it's going to be prohibited, at least rabbinically. Okay, and only when it's not is it going to be permitted. And even when it's permitted, when it comes to the asherah tree, you can't climb the asherah tree, and so as a result, you have to knock it down with a stick. Okay, so now we get additional items that if you find, they are going to be considered. This is really continuation of the topic of our last Mishnah of what's considered something that may have already been worshipped and what's not. And here again, we're going to have the dracon, the dragon slash boa constrictor. So let's take a look. Hamotzi kelim va'aleihem tzuras chama, tzuras levana, tzuras dracon. If you have on them a sun or a moon or a dragon, yolichem liyam, you have to send them to the sea. Yam melach, excuse me, you have to send them to the Dead Sea. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer. She'al hamechubadin asur. No. You have to look at what kind of vessel these things are on. If it's a vessel that gives honor to the item, to the sun, the moon, or the dragon, well, then fine. Then it's going to be prohibited. As Rashi says, Sha'al haMechubadin, Sha'al Kalim haMechubadim, on honorable vessels, things that are going to give honor, Shetashmish and Lekavod, that using them is a way of being honored, or a way of expressing honor. In the Gemara, we'll describe it in greater detail. That will not be today, but we'll, God willing, see it. Sha'al hamavuzin mutarin. But if in fact it does the opposite, and the items that they're on are not something that are dignified, well then it's going to be not prohibited according to Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. So lamemra de lahanihu de falchelahu lemidi achrina lo. Are you telling me that the only things that people worship are the sun, the moon, and dragons, and nothing else? Uraminu, but we got a brisa that says the following: Hashochet and we add the words l'shum harim, l'shum gvaos, that whether it's for the sake of mountains or the sake of hills, l'shum yamim, l'shum naharos. L'shum midbar, l'shum chama, l'shum levana, l'shum kochavim u'mezalos, l'shum michael sar hagadol, l'shum shilshul katan, harei elu zivchei mesim. So if one were to offer a sacrifice to mountains or to hills or to seas or to rivers or to desert or to the sun or to the moon or to the stars or to the constellations or to Michael, the great officer, or meaning to a particular angel, or to some tiny worm. They are all considered sacrifices for the dead, meaning they're all sacrifices to an idol, all of which is prohibited to benefit from. So doesn't this show that they worship so much more than just the sun, the moon, and the dracon? So Amar Abaye, miflach l'kol demashkechei palchei. Yes, you're absolutely right. Idol worshippers will worship anything, whatever they find. So meitzer umiflachei. However, if you ask them about what will they make and still worship, meaning it's not about what they find out there, but what they make. So hani tlasa de chashivi, these things are important. Sairi lahu ufalchi lahu. So they'll make it and then they'll worship it. Lemidi achrina, but something else. Lenoi ba'alma avdi lahu. Then they probably just made it to look nice, and it's just an art piece. So Menake Rav Sheshes Chumrei Misnayan. So Rav Sheshes would take the difficult Mishnahs, Vitani, and he would teach them. And so here is one of the difficult teachings that Rav Sheshes had. And now it has 3 rules, and we're going to see that on some level, based on our Mishnah, it looks like these rules are inconsistent. So rule number 1, Kol hamizalos mutarin chutz mimazal chama luvana. That when it comes to celestial bodies, you're allowed to benefit from them unless it's a picture of the sun or the moon. V'kol hapartzufin mutarin chutz mipartzuf adam. And all kinds of faces are permitted except for a person's face. V'kol hatzuros mutaros. And all figures are permitted. Chutz mitzuras drakon. The only one that's prohibited is the dragon. So now we're going to analyze each of these 3 individual rules on its own. So Amar Mar, the first rule, kol mazal mutarin chutz mimazal v'chama ulvana. Though all the things that are all of the celestial bodies are celestial bodies are prohibited except for the moon and the sun. I mean, are permitted except for the moon and the sun. Yeah, permitted except for the moon and the sun. So b'mayaskina, and the Gemara takes out the Hagosabach takes out the word haka. So what are we talking about? Ilema ba'osa, if we are telling me that you made the item, but iba'osa kol amazals mishari, are you allowed to make pictures of other celestial beings? V'haksiv lo sasun iti. The Torah says, Perakaf pasuk kaf in Shmos, that you're not allowed to make with me. What's with God? On some level, we view God as being in heaven, and so of course, God's everywhere. But what is with God? With God are the various celestial bodies. So lo sasun kidmus shamashai hamishamishin lufanai b'marom. So you can't make images of my servants who serve me on high. So ela pshita b'motzi. So as a result, we know that all the things couldn't be made. So what do we have to be talking about? We have to be talking about where you found such an item. So Ella, and that's consistent with our Mishnah. Ukaditnan, as we said in our Mishnah, Hamotzi Kalim ba'aleim tzuras chamo tzuras levana tzuras drakon yolichem leyama melech. If you find a figure of a sun or the moon, as well as a dragon, you need to throw it into the Dead Sea. And so as a result, doesn't that show that this must be dealing with a found item? Great. So okay. So in our first case in our mission in this brisa, it's dealing with a found item. But even Motze, if you're talking about found items, Ema Mitziasa, look at the middle case. Kola partsufos mutarin, that all kinds of faces are permissible. Chutz partus of Adam, except for the face of a person, excuse me. Ibn Motze, but if you deal with a found item, parts of Adam Yasser, did anybody prohibit a found face? V'hatzanan, what do we learn in our Mishnah? Hamotzi kelim ba'aleim turas chamas, turas levana, turas darkon. The only things that we said that were prohibited, if you found them, are the sun, the moon, and a dragon. So yolichem liyama melech. That's what you have to send to the Dead Sea. But parts of Adam, lo, you don't have to send. Turas drakon in. A dragon you do need to worry about. That has a face, but you do need to worry about it. But parts of Adam, lo, but a person's face, you don't need to worry about it. Ela pshita ba'osa. So it must be dealing with a situation where you made the face. Ukid Rav Huna braid the Rav Yoshua. And it's like Rav Huna said in the name of Rav Yoshua. And as we say, bottom line in Rashi, on Membed Amabed, Kid Rav Huna braid the Rav Yoshua. Da'amar lakama and Rishmaisen, as we will see shortly in this discussion. This is on tomorrow's daf. Kari Bay Lo Tasun Ot Kidmosi. Right? That when we say that you I'm sorry, Kribe Lo Tasun Iti, meaning that instead of I'm sorry, Lo Tasun Oti, don't make me. So not instead of Lo Tasun Iti, read it Lo Tasun Oti, don't make me, meaning Kidmuti, like my appearance, meaning that to the extent that God created man in God's image, so as a result, an image of a person is prohibited to be created. So as a result, the middle case clearly is dealing with a case of something that was made. And Iba Osa, if now you're telling me the first case was where you found it, the second case was where you made it. But Ema Seifa, what about the last case? We say Chutz Mitzuras Drakon, except for the figure of a dragon. So Iba Osa, when it comes to if you're making it Tzuras Drakon Miaser, did anybody prohibit drawing a dragon? No. V'haksiv Lo Tasun Iti Elohei Kesef, Elohei Kesef, Elohei Zahav. You can't make with me, namely Hashem, gods of silver and gods of gold, meaning the false gods. So what is it that you can't make? Only gods of silver and gods of gold. And that's how we learn from this that it's referring to images of Hashem's servants, namely either the celestial beings or faces, but of people. But honey, in those things you're allowed to make. I mean, those things are the things that you're prohibited to make. But Tzuras Drakon Lo, it's the image of a dragon is not one of the items that is prohibited by that pasuk. So Ela Pshita B'motzi, it's got to be dealing with where you found the dragon image. Ukititnan, and it's exactly like our Mishnah, which says Hamotzi Kalim Ba'aleim Tzuras Chama, etc. We say that if you find not only that, but if they have a dragon on it, then you have to throw it into the Dead Sea. So what do we have? We have Reisha v'Seifa b'motzi. The first case and the third case are dealing with you found the item. Umitziasa ba'osa. And the middle case is dealing with where you made the item. So how could that possibly be? So Amar Abaye, you're absolutely right. Reisha v'Seifa b'motzi, umitziyasa ba'osa. You're absolutely right. The first case and the last case deal with where you find the item, and the middle case is where you deal with where you make the item. Rava says no, not necessarily. Kula b'motze. They could all be talking about where you found the item. So 1 second though, the middle case seems to be where you made the item because it's dealing with the face of a man. And who says that finding the face of a man is going to be prohibited? Umitziasa Rabbi Yehuda. And so the middle case must be Rabbi Yehuda. Titania, because we have a brisa. Rabbi Yehuda Mosif. Rabbi Yehuda adds, not only if you find a sun, moon, and dragon, are you not allowed to keep it, and you have to throw it into the Dead Sea, but also aftemus manika, if you find the image of a woman nursing, the sar apis and the sar apis. And who will see what the sar apis is in a moment. Minika, what is a minika, a nursing woman? Al Shem Chava. It's based on the concept of Eve, meaning that there is this first woman, and some people will worship her because Sheminika kol olam kula, because she nursed the entire world. And Sar Apis, who is Sar Apis? Al Shem Yosef. It's based on Yosef, the Yaakov's son, who saved the entire world. Shesar Umevis es kol olam kulo, because he became prince and he calmed the entire world, meaning he fed the entire world. V'hudunakas geriva. But when a Sar Apis is only going to be problematic when you know it's Yosef, meaning he's got to be holding a measuring cup, a measuring thing. The Kayel, and he's got to be actually measuring, because the point is he's measuring out to ensure everybody. You can imagine why people would worship such an image, because one imagines God as sort of giving to everybody. We imagine God this way also, as God providing for all creatures. But this is actually worshiping the idol in that way. And when it comes to, so as a result, that's when the Sar Apis is going to be prohibited, if he's holding a measuring item and is measuring. And when it comes to the nursing woman, she's prohibited if she's holding a child, the kamanika, and she's nursing the child. And so as a result, when the middle item says that also when it comes to a face, a face of a human, it's going to be problematic. It means that the face is the face of a nursing mom or Yosef measuring items. And so then that would be the situation where if it was found, it would be prohibited, and therefore all of the items are dealing with found items. So the Gemara next defines what is meant by a dragon, but for that discussion, you'll need to stay tuned for tomorrow's daf. Looking forward to continuing our learning together. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thank you.